Hello lads and lassies, I'm actually on time with this chapter review. And let me tell you, I had a few people tell me I needed to read this chapter ASAP, and my god, you were right. Let's jump right into it. So Hinrigh Nobunaga opened the door to the laundry room, and there's no one inside. Not only that, but Nobunaga says how it seems like someone just left. Just like how it did when he and the others entered the back room. Nobunaga then takes a moment and realizes that they might have fucked up. He says how he never took a moment to think about what if the people they used to check for traps were part of the Hei-Ly. So the two guys they sent through the trap. And if they were the Hei-Ly, then the spiders would have tipped them off literally right before going in. Hinrigh then says that there's no fresh blood and the bodies are nowhere to be found. However, it is possible that they were just restrained and taken elsewhere. Hinrigh also says that it's possible that the Hei-Ly prioritized leaving rather than killing the people that came through the trap door. And then Hinrigh adds another thing, saying that it could just be protocol that if a neighbor gets sent through the trap, then everyone leaves. And he backs this up by saying that this would be a far more effective method than having one of the Hei-Ly members be guarding the room from another one. And as of this chapter, we have no idea what happened to these bodies. As far as we know, they're not Hei-Ly members, but we don't know what happened to them. I will say it's technically possible that these two were Hei-Ly members because the deaths of Luini and Paduli created an opening for two new members. However, it's super unlikely because Morena wanted those spots to go to two of Sarainik's soldiers to basically be spies. Nobunaga takes a moment before he says to Hinrigh, "Are you just trying to reassure me?" And by that he means reassure him that the Hei-Ly might not actually be prepared for their arrival. And Nobunaga then tells Hinrigh not to worry about him and that he's calm. Hinrigh says that he's not worrying and that they should just focus on the task at hand. And it's not like they're communicating in a way two best friends would, but I do think, and I do like, that the way Nobunaga and Hinrigh talk to each other are like that they're on the same page pretty much, and that they might not be best friends, but they're definitely friendly. And I just really enjoy the way that their dialogue is written. Hinrigh and Nobunaga come to the final door that they have yet to open, and when they open it, they see 6 Hei-Ly members just talking at a table. Cerebellum, Gelato, and Souffle are talking about what seems to be some kind of movie, show, book, or story. I thought it was pretty interesting. They were discussing about whether it's important or not to have unique individuals in a group. They were talking about unity, what creates unity, what's important about it, and whatnot. But something I took away from this conversation isn't so much about literally what they're talking about, it's more so how they're talking about it. And I mean, it's kind of totally the point of this, but I liked how you can see that these Hei-Ly members are interacting like they're really good friends. And they almost do it in a way that's lighthearted. And this adds to the perception to how they're similar to the Phantom Troupe, especially in the early days, and that's a huge part of this interaction. There's a lot of stuff being said in this upcoming interaction between Nobunaga, Hinrigh, and the Hei-Ly, but like I said, a big point of this is to show the similar dynamics between the Hei-Ly and the Phantom Troupe, and likely specifically the early spiders, and this parallel shouldn't be too hard to understand or a surprise, considering we had literally 3 chapters of a flashback literally to make Nobunaga's point that the Hei-Ly are just like they used to be. As the Hei-Ly are having their conversation, paying no attention to Hinrigh and Nobunaga at the door, Hinrigh yells over to them. Cerebellum, Souffle, and Gelato just kind of look over him like, okay. Hinrigh says that he's just gonna assume that they're at the Hei-Ly base and that those at the table are also Hei-Ly, and everyone just kind of looks at him and then just go back to talking like it's no big deal. Souffle even jokes that it's creepy how Hinrigh just barged in, and the Hei-Ly go right back to talking. But Hinrigh and Nobunaga are ready to get right to it. Hinrigh asks if Nobunaga's ready, and he's just like, yep. But Nobunaga also says that there's almost definitely another Nen trap just right through that door. He says that there's probably another trap, and that's why the Hei-Ly are acting so relaxed. And me personally, I feel like if the spiders, specifically Nobunaga, maybe Finks, and once upon a time Shalnark and Uvagin, I think that they might act this way too. If they had a trap set and someone came to fight them, I think they'd just sit around, joke, and be calm, trying to lure the attacker in. And I just feel like this was just a little small continuation of this parallel between the Hei-Ly and the spiders. Nobunaga goes on to say that it would be smarter to wait things out, but he says he likes cleaning up trash as soon as he finds it. And Hinrigh just says, I chose action, remember? You're not the only one who hates letting trash pile up. Plus, I've got enough knives to greet them all. I only read this line because I just really liked it. I think Togashi really likes writing Hinrigh because pretty much every line like that, little catchphrase, well, not catchphrase, little quip, I don't know the word for it, but you know what I mean. Anytime Hinrigh has a cool little line, it's normally really good, at least in my opinion. But anyway, Hinrigh gets straight to it and throws a knife into the room, and Terebellum sees it all happen, but isn't fazed at all. Actually, the only thing is that when the knife actually hits him, he just gets kind of pissed because it hurt. And Soufflé jokes and says, wow, it's all the way in there. That can't be good. And once again, not that we saw the spiders make a joke exactly like this, but this lighthearted joking in this tense situation, it just felt like to me that they're being shown to be similar to the troupe. And once again, that's kind of the whole point. But I'm gonna stop repeating it. My point has been made clear. Then Terebellum just stands up. And an important thing to note really quick is that we get this angle showing Terebellum's size. He's not towering over Hinrigh, but he's definitely bigger. He then just pulls the knife out like it was nothing and stares down Hinrigh as he just breaks the handle of the knife in his hand. Understandably, this shocks Hinrigh because Terebellum didn't pull the knife out of his head, he just pulled the handle off. The blade of the knife was just gone. However, he then notices that the blade somehow came out of one of the cans on the table. Nobunaga looks like he was getting a little serious, as he says that Terebellum is probably a counter type, which makes it a bad matchup. However, even knowing that he's a counter type, it doesn't really narrow down exactly what his ability is or how it works. And it's worth saying that Nobunaga wasn't getting slightly serious because he was intimidated. He was just serious about pretty much focusing on trying to determine how Terebellum's ability works, because if he doesn't pay attention, he can just get himself hurt. Nobunaga then asks Hinrigh if he wants to try throwing another knife, and Hinrigh is happy to throw another one. As they say this, it seemed like Terebellum looked a little confused, almost like he was thinking, dude, you just tried that and it didn't work. Why are you doing it again? Then Soufflé comes out of sort of nowhere and grabs Terebellum's arm, which seems to kind of shock him. In hindsight, worry him would be a better way to describe it. Hinrigh has a killer look on his face, and we see that the knife he threw fly right towards Terebellum. And this knife was either thrown much faster, or much more likely, Hinrigh used the advanced form of 10 to put his aura around the knife to increase the speed and power of it. Terebellum pulls his left arm away, sending Soufflé kind of flying to the side. Then this Hinrigh aura-infused knife comes flying past them towards Paragord, and he's just resting his face on his hand. And then all he has to say is, oh? He then thinks to himself, if this got stuck in my hand, I wonder how much it'd take to recover. And I gotta take a second to stop and talk about that, because this is the teeniest, tiniest insight to his Nen ability. Based off this one sentence, it's looking something like if Paragord is injured, he then takes something in order to recover. And I get that from him saying, I wonder how much it would take to recover. This could mean lots of things, but maybe it means that he uses up his own aura to heal himself, which is really cool, but also likely nothing too overpowered, because if that were the case, it would only take an injury to Paragord that took more aura to heal than he had left. Also, considering he put up his hand rather than just let the knife hit him somewhere else, maybe the hand has something to do with the ability, but at the same time, trying to guess something like this when Togashi is the writer, it's nearly impossible. But regardless of what Paragord's ability really is or what it might look like, he was preparing to use it. And given the situation, I think he wanted to more so test it out rather than use it, if that makes sense. And if he wanted to test it instead of use it, it gives me the impression that he's inexperienced with his ability, so I'm not too concerned about how threatening it might be. But anyway, right before the knife strikes Paragord's hand, Oralje puts the book he was reading right in front of it. Paragord thanks Oralje super casually, but Oralje's like, dude, don't thank me. And then Oralje asked Paragord if he was about to use his Nen ability. And that little quick exchange to me was basically like Oralje calling Paragord stupid. He could be kind of calling him stupid for almost revealing his ability. Maybe it was because he was just about to let the knife hit him just kind of to see what would happen. There's a couple different things it can mean, but I think at the core, Oralje is kind of calling him dumb for what he just did. Then Terbellum gets mad at Soufflé, saying that touching him was dangerous, and Soufflé gets on his knees and yells about how he's sorry. And I can't explain it all the way, but this just felt like a young Shelnark moment to me. I have no real backing for that, I'm just saying it. Soufflé then says that he and the others are gonna go hide, but tells Terbellum not to fight in the room. Then Oralje says something strange. And I mean like strange. Almost sounds like complete nonsense strange. He says to Paragord, "You've already been picked for Oregon, right? Didn't Morena order you to be careful?" And I'm gonna cover this super quick. Clearly, calling him an organ for Morena is important, and is later confirmed to be strange and important by Hinrigh and Nobunaga. But with what we currently know, which is nothing, we need more about this before we can start guessing what it means. At least I think so. Because at the moment, I have absolutely no clue what this could mean. Except that clearly, Paragord has a vital role to play for Morena. Obviously, she's gonna use him or needs him for something. But until we see if other characters have a role like organ, or get more information to what that means, it's just way too vague to figure out its meaning. And you might be thinking, hey, Apister, you just took a wild guess at what Paragord's Nen ability could be. I mean, yeah, but at least we knew it was a Nen ability. We know absolutely nothing about what organ means. But hey, if you have any idea, let me know. I'd love to hear it. That sounded sarcastic, but it wasn't. Anywho, Paragord is just like, oh yeah, she did say that. Whoops. And then Yokotani politely chimes in and talks to Hinrigh. Terbellum still seems upset with Soufflé, but says that they'll discuss it later. And then everyone else appears to leave, making it just Yokotani and Terbellum in the room. Yokotani puts on a fake smile and greets Hinrigh. He says he's the Hei-Ly legal advisor. And right before the others leave, Terbellum tells him to call the police and the army. And he tells them to say some wacko broke in and started throwing knives. Yokotani then says menacingly through a fake polite voice that on top of trespassing, Hinrigh will be charged with attempted murder. I like how, as a corrupt lawyer, he's still doing what he used to do before joining the Hei-Ly, using the law to protect his clients even though they're just as in the wrong, more or less. Anyway, Hinrigh just kinda matches the way Yokotani is acting and talking, and Hinrigh just says, hey, the police will be helpful because we just got lost. And this could have just been me, but I thought this was pretty funny because the way I took this interaction was Hinrigh basically being like, alright man, if you're gonna play dumb and play games with me, I'm gonna do the same. Yokotani then says, sorry buddy if you're lost, I'm not at liberty to say where we are. But he then says that as long as they follow his instructions, everything can get worked out peacefully. But then Nobunaga interrupts them, and Yokotani just smiles and is like, oh hey, you must be that Nobunaga guy from the Phantom Troupe. You're pretty cool if you don't mind me saying. And man oh man, Nobunaga wasn't having any of that shit. And he does something I was not expecting, given the current situation. Terbellum being a counter type, a trapdoor being one step within the room. I thought Nobunaga was kinda useless. But he just threw his sword right at Yokotani, and it goes right through that fucker's forehead. We see that Nobunaga has a chain attached to the bottom of his sword, giving him a much longer reach. But we also see that Terbellum is touching Yokotani with his right hand, and Yokotani seems to be totally okay. Nobunaga then sees how the tip of his sword that penetrated Yokotani is now gone. He then says that he now sees that Terbellum can not only move damage he takes, but he can also move damage done to other people. Terbellum then tells Yokotani to step back. And then as we basically see the tip of Nobunaga's blade turn to aura, leaving Yokotani's head, Nobunaga then sees blood start dripping down Terbellum's arm. And with this, he's able to figure out how his Nen ability works. And before we get a full description of the ability, Nobunaga says that he didn't peg Terbellum for the selfless type. And me and Nobunaga were on the same page on that point. So Terbellum is an emitter with the ability Sweet Home Damage. And the first thing I thought when I read that was Sweet Home Alabama, but whatever. In short, Cerebellum can transfer not only like the actual damage he takes, but also the means of the attack. Basically, when he got hit with Henry's knife, not only did he transfer the stab wound itself, he also transferred and removed the blade of the knife. Cerebellum can transfer any damage taken to whatever or whoever his left hand is touching. That's why it was such a huge problem Soufflé was touching him, because it was his left hand. He can also take damage from others using his right hand and then transfer it to something else with his left. However, if he takes someone else's damage or just gets injured himself and is not touching anything with his left hand, he just has to tank it. And a critical yet simple part of this is that he can only transfer damage if he's making contact with something with his left hand the moment of the attack. And real quick, for a few things I found really interesting is one, if Cerebellum is not prepared or fast enough, he just simply won't be able to save himself or others. And that probably puts a lot of weight on him for how to use his ability to protect himself and others. Protect the people he cares about. And that brings me to this point. With what I just said, along with his actual design, my first thought when I saw Cerebellum right here is, this is just the Hei-Ly version of Uvogin. And this is also added by the fact that he was shown to be bigger and appears aggressive, and although he may be that way, he's still selfless and does a lot to protect the others of his group. Finally, I was pretty interested by the lack of, I guess, limits. I think it's funny given the right scenario, Cerebellum could survive Zero Hand, given he was touching something with his left hand. I'm not saying that if the situation really happened, that it would go that way, because Netero would be way faster than Cerebellum could react. But the fact that it's technically possible for him to just counter Zero Hand is very fascinating to me. Nobunaga then says that he's got Cerebellum all figured out now. And he then asks Yokotani if he wants to go another round, basically. He then puts Aura around his sword once again and says he'll skewer them like a kebab. And I like that Nobunaga just started talking shit. Yokotani kind of starts sweating and says that he didn't expect Nobunaga to just throw his pride as a samurai away. And in case you didn't read, that pride was no projectiles in battle. But Cerebellum's like, yeah man, I wasn't ready for that either. I would have never thought he would do something so stupid. Yokotani then apologizes to Cerebellum again because now his ability has been revealed. Yokotani keeps on apologizing and Cerebellum is basically like, dude, stop it. Then Yokotani gets more upset and says he's sorry and he'll just leave. But Cerebellum's getting annoyed and he's like, dude, you're not leaving, you gotta get them out of here. And this part took me by surprise because after what I had just seen, I was like, this guy? This nervous, goofy guy is gonna get Nobunaga and Henry out here? The guy with the pigeons? How are you gonna get the guy with the pigeons out, huh? He has pigeons. And you simply can't beat the pigeons. It is canon that Henry's pigeons beat Goku on multiple occasions. Panels here. Anyway. And then Cerebellum's like, aren't you getting them out of here? Isn't that why you told them your name? And then says, aren't you supposed to be the guard? And then Yokotani's just like, oh, yeah, that's right. And we then get an explanation of his net ability. He's a conjurer, and his ability is called LSDF Moist Attack. It's a defense ability that's only usable when Morena's in the building, and right away that kind of hints at this ability having a very strong potential, because that's a pretty decent restriction, and restrictions equal more power. The ability activates when Yokotani tells an invader his name, and this is where it gets kind of crazy. According to the description we got and what we saw, the defense Yokotani conjures is invincible. However, it does specify immune to the invader's attacks. So say there was no trapdoor, and Finks and Phaeton just showed up. As long as Yokotani didn't identify them as invaders and didn't tell them his name, I believe they could do damage to Yokotani's defense, considering it's specified, and I quote, the conjured defense is immune from the criminals. But it's one of those things we just gotta wait and see. However, to keep this ability from being too insanely broken, while the defense is immune to damage, they also can't harm the intruder. And then finally, the defense can analyze the invader and increase their level as seen fit. Basically, the stronger the invader, the stronger the defense becomes. Or maybe more so, the more aggressive or efficient they become, however you want to look at it. We then see these puppet-type soldiers get conjured, and Yokotani tells them Nobunaga and Hinrigh have been charged with breaking and entering as well as attempted murder. And after that, the puppets take a caution level 4. Yokotani then tells them that their punishment is eviction. Nobunaga gets into a defensive stance, but worth saying, neither he nor Hinrigh genuinely looked that worried. Nobunaga then goes at one of the puppets, trying to stab it through its head. However, the sword basically just bounces off. And then the puppet changes its caution level to max, which is level 5. This shocks Nobunaga, but more so because it was something he wasn't expecting, rather than him being like, holy shit, these guys are strong, or feeling like his life was in danger. Nobunaga tells Hinrigh that they need to retreat, because the puppets must be invincible types. Once again, he's definitely a little concerned, but he's not like fearing for his life. Anyway, Nobunaga says that now that the puppets' conditions have been met, no attacks will work. The puppets quickly corner and basically just tackle Nobunaga. They take his sword, man, and start carrying him out to evict him. Nobunaga yells at Hinrigh, telling him to run, and that they'll keep chasing him until he's evicted. They take Nobunaga into the room with Yokotani, and they disappear through the trapdoor. I said they, but it's just Nobunaga that disappears. Then Yokotani is like, don't worry, we gotta make you leave too. Hinrigh tries to jump back, but Yokotani says he has nowhere to run. Hinrigh realizes that he can't really do anything, but it's crucial that he hides the transmitter so that they can return to the base later. Hinrigh gets into the laundry room and hides the transmitter under a table, and although the puppets likely saw him, it doesn't really matter because, as Nobunaga said, they're on autopilot, so they wouldn't understand what he's doing even if they did see. And I won't lie, regardless of my thoughts now, when I very first saw Nobunaga get taken away, I was like, holy shit, is this the end? Is Nobunaga gonna die? Or even come face to face with Morena? But no, he just got teleported to room 3101. Nobunaga realizes this and says how the two doors work both as a trap and a secret passage, and he then theorizes that if that's the case, there must be another door somewhere that's strictly for Hei-Ly members to use to get into and out of the base properly. And he wonders if it's in room 3101 somewhere. But then someone begins coming from the trap door. And something I like was that even though Nobunaga's sword was taken, out of instinct, he went to grab his sword. Just a small thing like this adds so much detail to a character, and just one of the many reasons I love Togashi. But anyway, it turns out the person coming through the trapdoor was just Hinrigh getting evicted. He comments on how he's back in room 3101, and he says that he's pretty much out of aura and knives, so he'll switch to a support role. So Hinrigh's current plan is to use the floor plans of the boat and the tracker to figure out where the Hei-Ly base is. He also says that he'll get sketches made of the Hei-Ly members he saw, so the Shiyu and likely the Char can go around looking and asking for people if they've seen said Hei-Ly members, and through that narrow down where the base is. We then cut to the laundry room super quick and we see the tracker underneath the table. Pretty sure this was simply to show that it's still there and where it was. However, maybe it's worth noting that the tracker is beeping, so it's possible because of the sound it's found, and who knows, maybe someone will use it to lead Hinrigh or whoever into a trap. But I'm pretty sure it's just showing us that the tracker's there. Then we get something pretty important. Hinrigh says he'll leave things to Nobunaga, who's just like, sounds good to me. But Hinrigh says, looked like a bunch of rookies to me. Until we learn more about their boss's power and that organ thing, we should stay on guard. Nobunaga agrees and says, at the very least, the one moving the pieces isn't stupid. And that's where the chapter ends. But why is that important? Well, maybe important isn't the perfect word, but I think it's really interesting that yes, both Nobunaga and Hinrigh said that the Hei-Ly members they encountered were rookies. However, I think the way they're saying it is more so that their abilities are new to them, that they haven't mastered them yet. Because I personally think that the abilities they displayed were pretty strong and effective. Terabellum's counter seemed pretty strong and good to me. Yokotani's ability was definitely strong. There was nothing they could do against it. Furthering how I felt that they weren't calling them weak or their abilities weak, they were just saying that they were new to the Nen game in general, and saying that they're inexperienced and weak are two different things. I'd also like to point out the slight evolution the Hei-Ly members have had. When Paragord and Billy first came across Lynch and Zakuro, they were just like, let's get these guys, and they got their asses beat. We then got Paduli, who basically got a new power, and he was like, With this power, I can beat anyone, and then he got fucked on by some pigeons. We move on to Luini, who seemed to be much more intelligent and well thought out. But due to his lack of experience and whatnot, he got fucked on by Nobunaga. But then we get to Vocante. His ability was meant to replace Luini's, and not only did it do that, but it did so way more efficiently, and I think that was the first kind of sign that the Hei-Ly are definitely getting stronger. Not only is the ability just good for the operation they have going, but it's very well thought out too. And then the next step in us being shown that the Hei-Ly are getting stronger is the abilities we see from Terebellum and Yokotani. Both of these abilities, like I said, might not be mind-blowingly strong, but they are definitely respectable. Terebellum's counter ability is versatile and efficient. Not only can he keep himself and others from being killed, essentially he could just touch an opponent with his left hand and slit his own throat, killing the opponent. And pretty much the same thing goes for Yokotani. For what he needs to do, for what his job is, there is nothing more efficient than what he's got. And this leads to my next point, that I believe that someone like Dogman, if not him himself, is gonna show that the Hei-Ly can be like serious, real deal strong. We'll have to wait and see, but I think that's exactly what we're leading up to, with the final boss being Morena. I don't think anyone ever really doubted whether Morena was strong or not, but I do think people were doubting me when I kept saying that the Hei-Ly are gonna get strong. But hopefully after this chapter and what we saw, people are starting to believe me. Are they super crazy strong yet? Not really. Are they gonna? I do think so. Maybe I should have said this earlier, but here's something to consider. Terebellum is level 21. Yokotane is level 27. And Dogman at least was level 36. Last we heard from him, he was trying to get to level 50. Mind you, every single level these people go up, they get significantly stronger. So I think at this point, it's pretty safe to start seeing the Hei-Ly as a pretty serious threat. And I think all of what I just said about the lower level members speaks a lot to how strong and powerful Morena probably really is. Not to mention that Nobunaga just straight up says that Morena is really smart. Overall, I really like this chapter. I love that we got to see some new, decently complex and really unique Nen abilities. I also really like to see the continuation of this Hei-Ly and Phantom Troupe parallel, a parallel we spent 3 chapters of a flashback preparing for. I also love seeing this so much because considering Morena is one of several final bosses, I guess, in the story right now, her parallel to Crollo is just being made to become so much better than I thought it would. And although the focus has been on the parallel of the two groups as a whole, I wouldn't be surprised if we get individual comparisons, specifically between Crollo and Morena. But like I said, I really like this chapter, and although I do love the storytelling and the drama, I will always and forever just love action scenes. Who doesn't, you know? And I love action in any anime or manga, but Hunter x Hunter just does it differently, and it just feels so fresh and tasty every time I see a fight. Even the simple ones, even just Nobunaga throwing his sword out there. Oh, whew. One final thought. So from one of Togashi's tweets, we know that chapter 400 will include Kurapika, and my expectation is likely we'll just start the chapter back on the first floor, and we'll get right back into the Succession War. But we won't know for sure until we see it, because it's totally possible half of it will be about the Phantom Troupe, and then we switch to Kurapika in some nice transition. But assuming we move back to the Succession War, I would imagine it will have a similar flow to the Mafia War. That flow being a lot of different things will start to come together, all in the name of beginning to escalate the tension. I think that a lot more princes will start to die, or at least start fighting, or assassination attempts will start to increase and whatnot. With how amazing these last 9 chapters have been, I'd expect some crazy intense things to start happening, considering we'll be back on the floor with Nen Beast, and some of those Nen Beasts are pretty crazy. Not to mention how much more time Sir Ragnek has had to learn Nen, how much more time Hulkenberg has had to become stronger, how much time Benjamin has had to prepare assassins. Who knows what's been going on with Kurapika, because last thing we really saw was he's kind of dying while stressing out about a bunch of stuff. A lot of chaos is brewing. And I think if the Succession War is similar to the Mafia War, then things are going to heat up fast. And I think at this point it's worth considering, what if Kurapika hears the news of the Phantom Troupe? It seems like a good time to drop that bombshell on him amongst all this other chaos we got going on. Because another thing is, I really think that the Phantom Troop, Mafia War, Sarainek, all this different stuff, I think all of these storylines are gonna come together at some point. The question is just like, when? But that's assuming more chapters will come out right after 400. It's very possible we'll get anywhere from a short to long hiatus. If there is a hiatus, I'd say it's safe to assume something like 6 months, considering how long it took the last batch of chapters to come out. Although it could be as short as 3 to 4 months, or even less. But because I don't want to get my hopes up, who knows, it could be like a year. To my current knowledge, we do not know for sure if there will be a hiatus or not after chapter 400. And if that has been answered, please let me know in the comments. But unfortunately, I think it's something we're going to have to wait and see next week. But that's all I got for you today. It was yet another great chapter, as all Hunter x Hunter chapters are. And I hope I could entertain you today. And as always, leave your thoughts, theories, and feelings in the comments. And little bonus note, I do not know when, but I'll try to get some not chapter review videos out soon.